know, the American people, Mr. President, as you well know, the American people are the most generous people in the entire world. In our country, when you are hungry, we feed you. When you are homeless, we house you. When you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. We spend trillions of dollars a year helping our friends and neighbors who are less fortunate than we are. And that's rare in this world. I've been all over our wonderful world. You have too, Mr. President. And in many countries, if you get down on your luck, they'll let you die in a ditch. But not in America. Not in America. We take care of our fellow citizens. But it's expensive. We spend trillions of dollars a year to do this. And that money that we spend didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of taxpayers' pockets. And we shouldn't lose sight of that fact, Mr. President. Now, that's why I get so irritated. Irritated's the wrong word. Angry. When I find out that people take advantage of the American people's generosity. It makes me want to knee someone in the groin. It just makes me furious. And I think the American taxpayers feel the same way. What I'm about to tell you, Mr. President, let me apologize in advance, is deeply disgusting. It's deeply disgusting. I mean, it is clown world on steroids. And when I first read about this, Mr. President, I read it a second time because I experienced slack-jawed astonishment. And when I read it a second time and I realized it was true, I just wanted to run away screaming. What am I talking about, Mr. President? We have discovered, the federal prosecutors have discovered, that for the last 5 years, there has been massive welfare fraud in the great state of Minnesota. Massive. Over $1 billion of American taxpayer money has been stolen. Just stolen. They can call it fraud, but a better term would be stealing. And this fraud has been centered in the Somali community in Minnesota. Now, I'm not here to criticize the Somali community. I'm here simply to describe what happened. The Somali community in Minneapolis is about 80,000 people. They're centered around Minneapolis. And let me say it again. I'm not here to denigrate the Somali people or people of Somali ancestry just because of the actions of a few. But it is a fact that this $1 billion in welfare fraud occurred almost exclusively in the Somali community in Minnesota and was orchestrated by people with Somali ancestry. That's a fact. Facts aren't racist. Facts are facts. So far, 59 people have been convicted, 86 have been charged, and 78 of them are of Somali ancestry. That's just a fact. Now, what these criminals did they had three very elaborate schemes. The first scheme was centered on supposedly feeding hungry children in the Somali community. A group, a nonprofit run by some people with Somali ancestry. The name of the nonprofit was called Feeding Our Future. Feeding Our Future. Feeding Our Future went to the welfare authorities in the state of Minnesota, which of course was administering federal taxpayer money, and they said, "Look, feeding our children said, feeding our future said, we want to feed hungry children in the Somali community." And the welfare people in state government in Minnesota gave them the money to do that. It started out very small. But the idea was that Feeding the Future, the Somali nonprofit organization, would take this federal taxpayer money, American taxpayer money, and go to businesses, most of which were Somali businesses, in the Somali community, and set up feeding sites where they supposedly would take children to get a hot meal. On paper, it sounded great. As I say, it started out very, very small, just a few $1 million. But eventually, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And more businesses in the Somali community signed up to be feeding sites. And Feeding Our Future, the Somali nonprofit, kept going back to the Social Services Department in Minnesota saying, "We need more money, we need more money." And at the height of the fraud, they were spending about $100 million a year. Not over the lifetime of the program, $100 million a year. There's just one problem. There were no hungry children. There were hungry children. They just weren't getting any of the money. And the businesses, many of which were Somali owned, which were getting some money to feed the children from Feeding Our Future, the nonprofit that was quarterbacking this whole thing, they weren't giving any of the money to hungry children. They were spending it. These businesses were spending it on yachts and vacations and jewelry and furniture for their home. That was scheme number one. But it got worse. The second scheme was supposedly to help people who are homeless. Remember, I said in America, when you're homeless, we'll house you. Well, that's what they were trying to do in Minnesota. A nonprofit was set up, again run by someone of Somali ancestry. And this nonprofit went to a bunch of providers who supposedly were going to provide housing. And they told the welfare authorities in Minnesota that they needed millions of dollars to house people who were homeless. And once again, the program started out small. When they started it in 2020, these crooks started it in 2020, they said, "We only need $2.6 million. But then in 2021, they said, "We need $21 million. And in the following years, They said we need $42 million the next year, then $74 million to feed, or rather to house the homeless, then $104 million a year. Not the total scheme, a year. There's just one problem. None of the money was going for housing. None of the money was going to help people who were homeless. These providers and this nonprofit that was coordinating it just put the money in their pocket. But there's more. They came up with a third scheme. This one makes you want to throw up in a potted plant. This one's centered around autistic children. Once again, in this third program, a group of providers, supposedly medical providers, got together and they went to the welfare authorities in Minnesota and said, we need money to help autistic children. You say, well, that's a wonderful thing to do. And then these providers, once the welfare department at the state government in Minnesota gave them the okay, they went out and started recruiting autistic children. You say, well, okay, we have to get the word out somehow. But they couldn't find very many autistic children. So they started going to parents in the Somali community and saying, can we call your child autistic? Can we certify that your child is autistic? If you'll let us do that, we'll pay you a bribe. Anywhere from $400 to $1,500 a child. Now, once again, the program, it didn't start big. These were sophisticated crooks. And its leader was a woman by the name of Asha Farban Hassan. She was also in, by the way, on the feeding of the children scam as well. And as best we can tell, they approached parents only in the Somali community. But once again, they couldn't find enough autistic children, so they bribed many parents in the community, gave them money to certify that their children were autistic. In the first year, they were clever. They only asked for $3 million. The second year, in 2019, they asked for $54 million. Then in 2020, they went up to $77 million. And then in 2021, they really got greedy. They went to $183 million. And in 22, $280 million. And in 2023, $400 million. All total, in these three fraud schemes, these crooks stole $1 billion of taxpayer money. Here's the